White Sox fans, welcome in to Sunday Funday with Sox on Tap. It's Jonnie and Steve here alongside NWI Steve, breaking it down on Sunday, July 23rd. Steve, rough weekend for the White Sox in many ways.
A pretty miserable experience overall for the weekend. You go up to Canada South, you find some creative ways to lose 3 ball games and get swept, and it's just a miserable time.
It's miserable, and I want to start out. There's plenty to dive into in terms of the games themselves, what it means for potential, guys on the move. We've got manager quotes to get through. That's all coming up in the show. But I want to start off with a sentiment that we had shared on our Thursday show, previewing the weekend, and it was about having some pride, saying "fuck the Twins," right? Division rival. We as fans, we want to beat them. You go in there and get swept. You can't even take one. I was thinking they were going to do the old Sunday salvage. Looked like that was going to be the case when you go up the 3-0 into the 9th. But then to have it all fall apart, it's comically bad. So that's what the title of this episode is.
That's very well put, Jonathan. There's nothing really positive that you can take out of this weekend for the most part here. From a team perspective, you had, I think, a couple of individual moments for some guys that could be construed as positive, but just by and large, you talked about this, trying to go out there and play with some pride, trying to, take one to a division rival and a team that is leading your division. Not that you were going to catch them anyway, but to just at least go out there and have some balls, for lack of a better term. And they went out there and they had none of it this entire weekend.
Yeah, speaking of that, Sal says the balls. We'll call this Sunday Funday. Yeah, we got them. We got the cojones over here. Someone's got to have them within the White Sox world, right? So hey,
right on cue, Sal.
Sox. Steve, when we were on this just last Sunday Funday, luckily, then we were talking about the team disguised as the White Sox that showed up in Atlanta. So there was a little bit more fun there, but we're still going to have some fun with it. Like I had said on that show, we're going to laugh about it. I'm into that stage while it still angers me. And I think everyone is on that train. I made this comically bad here because I'm just going to laugh at it. And honestly, we have some billboard material for this with Pedro Grifol's quotes. Last night, I thought I was having an aneurysm reading some of those, Steve. We can dive into that in a little bit. I guess we can mesh these, because one that I want to talk about was Oscar Colas and the boombox comparison that Pedro Grifol had, and it was turning the volume from 10 to 8 on that. A little bit interesting way to go about that. I think it could have been worded a little bit better, because this is leading to all sorts of memes and sayings and all of that kind of stuff. For one, I'm a boombox enthusiast. I like it up to 11, because this one goes to 11, Steve. That's my take on him. But I guess I get what he was saying there, and it's funny that both he and Eloy, the guys that these quotes were about, actually came out and showed some flashes today. So maybe he's not totally losing it, but at the same time, those quotes were certainly interesting. Let's start with Colas and the boombox. What's your take on the boombox?
My take is that it appears that since he quote unquote won the press conference when he was hired as manager back in, what was that, November, December-ish, whenever that was, he apparently has not gone back to PR school since then, because like you said, the way that he worded that quote was just extremely weird. And then, you follow that up with the Eloy stuff that we're going to get to here in a little bit. It's really kind of just leaves you scratching your head a little bit. If you're talking about wanting Oscar Colas to dial back his intensity level, even still, for a guy that coming into the game had a WRC plus of 35, I mean, is that really the thing that we should be talking about? Is his quote unquote intensity level needing to be dialed back? Because to me, looking at it, I don't think this is an intensity problem from Oscar Colas.
I think if we were going to PR school, let's figure it out for Pedro here. It would be that he's pressing. I think that would be the word to use. That's a pretty standard terminology when you're talking about guys that might be in a slump or struggling, as he is as a rookie player. pressing a little bit, expecting too much out of himself, where, let the game come to you. I think all of those cliches would have been better than the boombox one.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, just the boombox one, I don't know where the hell he comes up with this stuff at this point. And the quotes from him, they're getting more and more bizarre and off the wall, just in a variety of different ways, pretty much almost on a nightly basis at this point. And it's looking more and more like there's a reason why nobody ever thought of this guy as a manager previously.
Yeah, right. I'm definitely with you on that. But let's talk Oscar Colas just for a little bit here. Like you'd mentioned, the figures, the numbers aren't, great for him. He struggled since returning to the big league club. But at this point, the season's lost. Like, this is the time for him to iron out, some of the shit and, honestly play through it. As much as it sucks, you don't want to, put a guy in like a terrible position, but it's like you got Zach Remillard having a tough time fielding routine base hits to right field on Friday night. And it's like, at least we saw Oscar Colas today. The defensive part of his game looked pretty good there, especially that throw outfield assist, the fastest recorded in StatCast era for White Sox history, I want to say. I believe that was Sarah Lang's little tidbit on that one. Basically, this is a time for him to figure it out. What good is it doing having him ride the bench?
You're absolutely right. At this juncture, the season is lost. You have to find out, and you have to just give him the remaining 400 plate appearances or however many would be left at this point, and find out, okay, is this somebody that you think can long-term be part of the plan? And obviously the initial results have not been good for him here at the big league level. We saw him get demoted, go down to Charlotte, and he struggled initially when he got down there, and then he really picked it up, which led to the promotion. Now at this point, you got to find out, is he a viable major league everyday right fielder or not? This is the time to do it. You've got 2 months left of games to go through at this point. We know what Gavin Sheets is. We know Zach Remillard is not an outfielder. So you have to see, is this somebody that is going to be part of the plan here going forward, whatever that plan might so happen to be.
Right. And, it's funny that the quote came out about the whole boombox thing, and then he goes 3 for 5 today. I know he did strike out twice, and there's that instance in extra innings where it would have been nice to see him deliver there. But it's funny that, we're all kind of like dunking on him for like this like terminology, and rightfully so. Like I said, it becomes a meme. That's what happens in the internet era. Okay. But it was funny that Colas then has that performance today. He had that outfield assist. And then Eloy, we can shift to the next one. And it was Pedro saying that he was choosing his bat over his legs because obviously he's having some difficulty, kind of from a week ago that what caused him to come out of the game with the groin strain. So Eloy not moving all that well, but he didn't have to move too fast on the first ball that he hit today because he sends it out of the yard. So, hey, is Pedro Grifol secretly a genius behind all of this? I mean, you're a big Pedro guy, so.
I mean, listen, Mr. Clean obviously, did some wonderful motivational tactics here to get these two guys going. And you're right. You don't have to really use your legs a whole lot to jog around the bases. We saw Paul Konerko jog around the bases just fine. We saw Jermaine Dye on one leg jog around the bases just fine. So, you know what? Hey, hit that ball over the fencing they set up prior to the game more frequently, and then you really don't have to worry about Eloy running and scoring with his hamstrings. So just do more of that.
Yeah, right. I think the sentiment, though, and all right, so when what people got people going about this was the whole, are you, just risking greater injury for him in games that are already meaningless? And then Pedro follows that up with saying, he's going to be in the lineup tomorrow because that's a game that we have to have. Right. So he's talking about must win games here when you're 18 under 500 at that point. Now 19, because you didn't have that one in the series finale. But I think that's, the manager has to say that. He can't say, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. I understand that sentiment of it, but fans are just so sick of hearing that. So that's at least where I stood on that.
Yeah. At this point, there's obviously Pedro fatigue with this fan base already. And it's pretty amazing. It took about 100 games for it to get to this point already. And we kind of talked about this, a week or so ago, is this This is what a one and done manager really does look like. Whether or not that actually happens or not remains to be seen. I know obviously there's a lot of doubt about that, but more and more evidence that this is what we're looking at should happen. But I just I don't even really know what else to say about his quotes at this point anymore. Our buddy Voodoo checking in here in the comments as always here, saying all joking aside with this guy Pedro, he's in over his head. There is no doubt about that at this point, that he is absolutely in over his head. You can see it. Anthony kind of early on in the season made the comparison to Jeremy Colleton on the Hawks side of the equation here, and which what was an interesting quote. And I mean, apparently, not everybody in Chicago might get the reference, because apparently Chicago's not a hockey town. I mean, never mind the fact that they were one of the original 6 franchises, been here for almost a century, but not a hockey town though.
Right. Yeah.
So fascinating in that regard here, but I think the comparison is becoming more and more apt by the day.
Right. There's a, he says Pedro's, I know you love Pedro, but he's got to go. I agree on that front there. I think a lot of people are in that same camp there. But then another point here that Dust UFO comes in with says the team just sucks. And it's a very simple, it's easy to just say that when you're seeing losses pile up and you're 19 under 500 and all that. But I don't know if even a good manager would get a whole lot out of this group, given the injuries that they, problems that they have on that front, lack of depth, and just something seems off, culture-wise, attitude-wise, overall, and that's on the players. You can't fire the players, right? You can, shuffle around a little bit, but at the same time, we know what this core is at this point, and the window is slammed shut. So, team sucks. Don't know if a good manager would be able to do anything with it either. So that's, on that front there. We had one more from Pedro. I got to bring it up. And that was, you talked about the fatigue. Maybe Pedro's getting fatigued himself a little bit, because when you talked about Yohan Moncada potentially returning this upcoming week, saying that Jake Berger, it's a possibility that he plays second base, and he added a why not at the end of it. So, you know what? Good for you, Pedro, because I'm glad you're finally letting it out a little bit, because that kind of feels a little bit more relatable to the fan base, in my opinion.
Fascinating that he's saying why not now, when earlier on in the season, when Jake Berger was, the hottest hitter on this team, it was, we don't really want to do that. But now all of a sudden, this team's 20 games under 500. The season is over, or Pedrover, as the memes would say here. Now all of a sudden we're willing to consider it. It's just like, what are we doing here?
Right, and the reasoning for it was that the bat has to stay in the lineup, right? I don't have the exact quote up in front of me, but if I'm just paraphrasing it, that was part of the reasoning behind it. And like you had said, it flies in the face of what was going on earlier. So it just in over his head. That's where I'm at. But the why not? I don't know. I got a good, like I said, we're taking things comically now. I got a good chuckle out of that.
That's all we can do at this point. You mentioned this last week, that at this juncture, you have to approach the remaining games of this season as a comedy. We've already been through the tragedy of it.
Yeah.
Now we just have to approach it as a comedy.
Yeah, that's where we're at. And this is, like I said, we have plenty of material here to work with, thanks to Mr. Clean in the dugout there. So, when we're talking White Sox rest of the season, the next big thing coming up here, trade deadline. I know we talked about it last weekend, and we're going to talk about it until this happens, because I'm actually shocked that nothing has really moved too much besides that one deal that Baltimore pulled off with Oakland. We're still sitting here with that one lone trade there. Nothing on the White Sox front here, but anything that you saw over this last stretch of games here that increases, decreases trade value, makes other teams intrigued, not want to touch things with 10-foot pole. Rough go of it for Lance, and then you got Giolito today. I know we said last time that might have been his last start with the White Sox. Did he just make his last start with the White Sox? I guess is where I'm going with that.
I mean, if it were me, look, he should not be getting on that plane coming back to Chicago. I know obviously his next start that he's scheduled to make, because of the off day, would be next Saturday against Cleveland. He can't make that start. That just simply can't happen. and then you've got the idea of, Lance is due to pitch this coming Wednesday against the Cubes at home. If you can get a taker on him, honestly, I think you need to kind of make that move as quickly as possible here. Those are a couple of the transactions that really there's no point at this juncture to waiting any longer on these. And then some of the bullpen pieces as well. You look at Kendall Graveman, Keenan Middleton, and guys like that. Yaz kind of with his little bit of a resurgence here to the start of the second half. Maybe that could spark a team like maybe the Miami Marlins, who have been in a free fall themselves, needing some offensive, additions to try to get back in the playoff race a little bit as they've fallen out of a wild card spot there. Hopefully, something like that could come to fruition here over the next couple of days. But I think the two biggest pieces, obviously, like I said here at the start of this, Lucas Giolito and Lance Lynn. I mean, just get these deals done at this point. I don't really know what we're waiting on.
Right, and I think this is a good high point to finish on here with Lucas Giolito. 5 innings today, 6 hits, no runs though, 9 strikeouts. He walked 3. That's a much better, kind of last taste in your mouth than the outing that he had against the Mets, where he got roughed up in the first inning there. So that was good to see on that front for Lucas Giolito. And like I said, I probably would, like to think that was his last start, but who knows? Like I said, we all thought that last time, and then absolutely nothing's happened on the trade market. So we'll see what that entails. So Lance, I don't know. I would imagine I don't foresee a deal getting done before Wednesday. So as much as it might hurt, or I don't know, maybe help, he's gonna. I have a feeling that he'll be out there Wednesday, so it'll be interesting to see. But an interesting name that you brought up was Yaz. He is definitely hitting the ball with some more authority. You saw a nice bat drop. It was that Friday night, and then he's roped a couple of balls in addition to that. And shit, he was even playing some first base today and looked actually decent there. I know in the past that's been an issue. I remember some instances of drop balls there, but man, made a nice catch on a liner. Put away that out for the bunt that Joey Gallo inexplicably attempted there. But either way, he actually looked competent there at first. So I don't know. Someone intrigued, adding some catching depth, bat like that.
Yeah, why not? He's in the last year of his deal. I think it's pretty clear at this point that he's not factoring into the future plans. So if you can get, and I was talking with Anthony about this over text, I want to say maybe a couple, 2-3 days ago, that obviously you're not going to get a great return on it. It's probably going to be a guy that is maybe a failing starter in Double-A. So you take a lotto ticket on a guy like that and see if maybe you can tweak a couple things and develop a future bullpen piece. That's really all you're going to get out of, a deal for Yaz at this point, which again is better than just letting him walk for nothing in the offseason. So if you have a taker like Miami or somebody else out there, I think that's definitely something you need to execute on. And then one last other point that I want to make about this, because seeing obviously a lot of people kind of talking and throwing Dylan Cease's name out there, I just don't see it happening here during the season right now, because again, they still have to cover 61 more starts this year. And if you're already moving Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito, I mean, one of them is going to be gone for sure. There's a good chance 2 of them could be gone. We don't know when or if Mike Clevenger is ever going to show back up. You're not going to get yourself to a point where you have now 3 holes in the rotation. That's asking way too much. I know the games don't matter, and a lot of people are kind of on the tank train at this point. Just try to lose as much as you can to drive up your probabilities with the ping pong balls, in hopes that things go well the way that they did for the Blackhawks a couple of weeks ago here. But I just don't see the Dylan Cease thing happening during the season. I feel like there's just a lot of mental energy that is being expended on that is really just a waste.
Right. And I feel like if you're looking for best prospect capital, you had outlined a little bit of just, who has the most strength to offer. You want to go to Baltimore and you want them to actually cough up some of the top names there, right? If you were to move him there. And then you're looking at the Dodgers too, because those catching prospects can be enticing there. But like you said, with Dylan Cease, I don't see it happening. I know it's kind of, it can be a thought exercise to, talk about how you would rebuild the team. But I also, whenever I like consider any of these, I like to think of what the front office will actually do. Well, it's great to have hypotheticals and theories and all of that. There's also, you have to think about it. How are they operating on that front? And then the team needs, like you said, not that these games matter, but you still have to cover the rest of this season. And then if you're moving Giolito there, and obviously he's going to be a free agent, so you wouldn't probably resign him either. So that makes sense to move him. But that's one less starter than for next year. And you're talking about Dylan Cease and Michael Kopech at the top, and what, Tuki Toussaint going to be the ace of the staff in next year. That's where you're at. And I don't know. You could, shit. You could still trade Dylan Cease next year, right?
Yeah, I think that this front office still has some delusions of grandeur that they can somehow tweak this thing on the fly and be in contention in 2024. And personally, I just don't see it, given the hold that you're going to have on this roster.
With the weak farm system that there's no replenishment coming internally, so that would require throwing money at all of your problems, and we know that's not going to happen. Right. You might fill one position competently, but do you really trust the White Sox, this front office?
We know they'll spend in the free agent market to fill the bullpen holes. We know
right.
That.
Yeah, right. That's a couple of names you mentioned, bullpen, bringing that up. We had talked about Gregory Santos, Keenan Middleton, and I think we were both in the camp to keep Santos. But man, rough showing. If they're trying to sell Keenan Middleton, that was a rough showing Saturday night. That does not inspire confidence. And it also, people also pondered, would you keep him and then you sign him to whatever shorter term deal to keep him around, in years to come. I really hope this isn't the start of the decline for him. This is the kind of Ronaldo Lopez moment coming, but mid-season here. That would be disappointing, because he has been kind of a breakout piece, in diamond in the rough, so to say. And we don't have very many of those, so it was nice to see for a little bit, but that hurt on Saturday.
Yeah, that would definitely be bad news for this team if Middleton was kind of turning back into a pumpkin a little bit, especially at this juncture now. Here we are, 8 days away from the deadline here. So really bad timing for kind of a couple of outings that he's had over the last maybe 7 to 10 days or so. That's where, again, I think it really does start to become paramount from the timing aspect of this for the team to get out in front of it in certain aspects of it. I know I'd written previously about, kind of being patient with Lucas Giolito and kind of letting the rest of the market dictate itself. I think particularly with Marcus Stroman across town, I think that's really going to be the biggest starting pitching domino to fall here, unless for some reason, if the Mets decide to divest themselves and would potentially make maybe Justin Verlander available, but I believe he's got a no trade clause. So there's another wrinkle in that situation right there. So, that could kind of tie things up with Giolito a little bit here, but this is going to be one of the most exhausting weeks coming up here, just refreshing twitter.com, looking for the updates here. The lack of activity to this point, as you mentioned, has been very frustrating to see. At some point, that first domino has to fall, though, and hopefully it comes sooner rather than later.
Right. Yeah, I'm ready for the trade deadline to be over, and the bulk of it hasn't even happened yet, but we'll see what happens there. Another name when we were on bullpen there, I just wanted to bring up Kendall Graveman, of course, today with the meltdown in the ninth there. That doesn't do any favors in the "what have you done for me lately" column, but I feel like he's still a reliable enough over multiple seasons to where teams would overlook that. A little hiccup here today. So it sucks to see, because you want to bolster that value as high as you possibly can. That's a hot term around this time of the year. I still think if someone was dead set on acquiring him, then they may not shy away from that. So frustrating to see, but I don't think that's gonna completely deter any possible suitors away. But who knows? Because he's still under contract next year, right, Graveman?
I believe it's an option.
Okay. Right. And then Jelly's back too. Back from the IL.
Yeah.
That, Another name too. I mean, guy still touches 100, man. That's
Yeah, and with some of these guys that maybe are struggling a little bit, particularly like the bullpen pieces or even a Lance Lynn, somebody that's had a tumultuous season. I'm sure that there probably are teams that are just thinking, hey, if we just get him here and get that White Sox stink off of him, we can get him back on track. And I wouldn't doubt if there is validity to that in a number of circumstances. So, we'll just wait and see what happens here.
right. Yeah, that's another like interest. Obviously, we're kind of mocking up what we think potential returns could be for these guys, but to watch what happens with trade pieces if they go somewhere, it'll be interesting to see down the stretch if how much better they perform. If there's like a weight lifted off of them, like you said, the White Sox stink. I think that's a good terminology for it, because while these guys have individual talents and they still got to go out there and do a job, that locker room culture that's definitely flawed within there, it has to be weighing on these guys, right?
Yeah, you definitely would think so. I do personally, I kind of go back and forth on this a little bit because, and granted, look, I know playing in high school, junior college, it's not the same thing as playing at the highest level with 30,000 people there and being on national TV every night where anybody can see what is happening with you from a performance standpoint. So I just always kind of looked at it as, from a pitcher standpoint in particular, your job is to go out there and get outs. It doesn't matter if your team is 20 games below 500 or 20 games above 500. When you take the ball, you have to have the mindset that you're going out there, that you are going to get that hitter out and that he's not going to beat you. Not every human being is wired the same way, unfortunately. And I think that there are people that, I guess, kind of similar to what you see just in everyday life. If there's a toxic work environment that you have, your performance can suffer as a result of it, and then you kind of extradite yourself from that situation and get into one that doesn't have that level of toxicity to it, and all of a sudden now your performance can see an uptick to it again. So that could very well be the case for some of these guys.
Right. And I see it like in team actions and like kind of the dugout shots, so to say. You look at a team like the Braves and they're going well and stuff, and everybody's dialed in, everybody's locked in, congratulating each other, celebrating. Sure, the White Sox do their little home run jacket and hat and all of that. But other than that, it just seems like there's a like wall surrounding them. And I get it. So, you're fucking 19 games under 500 now. It's kind of hard to get the old juices flowing sometimes there, but I don't know. It needs to be, kind of dissipated in my mind. And hopefully that starts with some of these trade deadline moves.
Yeah, there's definitely a culture problem in that dugout and in that clubhouse, and it's really been an issue, I would say, since the beginning of last season. Whatever happened, and again, I talked about this, in our preseason show a year ago, that just something felt off with this group coming off of a division title, 93 win season. Something just didn't feel right, and it started out last year, and we've seen a continuation of that here this year. Everybody that said that getting rid of Sleepy McDrunkface was going to fix that over the winter, and trying to caution people that I don't see it that way. And it, in fact, has not fixed that problem here. In many cases, you could almost say that the problem has gotten worse now this year. So something's got to be done. This group has to be broken up because it's just broken entirely on so many different levels.
Right. This group ain't it, I think, is the best summary that I can give of that. But also just on that front, you're talking about people that may have been a little bit higher on Grifol because he won the press conference and all early on after he was hired. But my kind of concerns were that, sure, he was a bench coach for the Royals, but not just being a rookie manager, coming into a situation and handling situations like this. How do you handle adversity from, a top leadership standpoint, because you're not the bench coach anymore. You're not just a guy there. You are the guy there. And obviously we've seen in over his head. That's the best way to describe it there. And it's, was the fixing this was not as simple as changing the manager. Very obvious now, but
And I think one other key point to that was, you talked about bringing in somebody from outside the organization and how they were going to deal with facing adversity that first time. In Pedro Grifol's time as a bench coach in Kansas City, those were bad teams. There were never high points to it. It's not as if you bring in somebody like a Joe Espada, who was with the Astros, was got there as a bench coach after the 2017 cheating scandal and everything. But remember, that was an Astros team that the 2020 pandemic season finished below 500 and still found a way. They got into the playoffs and they got to the ALCS. They had some ups and downs in the 2018 and the 2019 seasons, but they still ultimately were successful in winning their divisions and then getting back and going to 6 consecutive league championship series there. So this is something that was a part of an organization that has had success, had minor downturns during individual seasons, and understood what kind of had to happen from a clubhouse and from a roster dynamics standpoint to right the ship. Pedro Grifol has never had any experience being in that position. And I think that's something that's being slept on a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's, Joe Spada, a guy that you had identified, in previous, picks for managers when we kind of wrote and discussed things like that on this podcast. And then just last week when we were talking about it, if you had your pick of the lot, that was the name that you had brought up there. So fair points all across the board there. As we move on here in Sunday Funday with Sox on Tap, thanks to everybody for joining the comments here. Make sure you're subscribed on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube so you can join the conversation. Let's talk what's on tap next, and that is coming back home. And the Cubs series, 2-gamer, start the week, and then Cleveland coming into town for the weekend. I know we had talked about, some of us, you won't be there, but some of us getting there together on Friday, and it just sucks because, sure, go and have some fun and seeing buddies and stuff like that. But man, it's just so deflating. I'm just wondering what the vibe in the ballpark's going to be like. I know it hasn't been great all year, but now, especially after you get swept over the weekend, your low point here, 19 games under 500. It's how low can we go here? Because I thought last year felt like a low, and we've sunk even below the surface of that.
I think it's pretty clear the high point of the weekend is going to be when you guys are out tailgating before the game on Friday. And then it's going to turn into a situation of, well, shit, we got to go inside now. And, look, Cleveland, they're fighting for their playoff lives right now.
We're going to get Naylord again.
That's the fear,
yeah.
With this. And look, if there's one guy, one manager in this sport that has, for a long period of time gotten more out of nothing than Terry Francona, I don't know who it is. I'm sure he's looking at this thing saying, hey, we got 4 against the White Sox this weekend. It's time to get healthy, and it's time to put a couple of numbers, probably, they're thinking at least 3 in that left-hand column there, which is going to go a long way for them trying to stay in this race and trying to catch up to Minnesota at this juncture. And it's just really sad at this point that here we are in less than 2 years. We are now supporting the team that other fans look at and say, oh, those are wins. That's a series win.
Right. It sucks because it happened early this year with that long losing streak in April, but it sucks being like that in that spot, in that basement, because, we just had the smallest taste of it. Right. I was thinking about when looking at the schedule and years past, and back when we, early 2021, it was we were calling the Orioles slapdicks and stuff. Remember that? Those are good times, but those are far, far gone. Obviously, everyone knows that since kind of the all-star break of that 2021 season, this team has been what they are and what you're seeing on a daily basis this year. So it sucks. And I guess the only way that there's going to be a little bit of excitement, I don't even know it's kind of bold to call it that, is after the trade deadline. If you get some, either an MLB ready piece there or a potential call up later in the season for one of those, assuming that you got the guy close enough, not a low level prospect in terms of like, double A or like high A. If you got someone that was more close to MLB ready, that's about the only thing that really like gives you any sort of, I don't know, want to out there.
It's crazy that you think back 10 years ago when this team swung the 3-team deal that sent Jake Peavy to the Ginger Sox, along with the Detroit Tigers, and the main centerpiece of that deal was Avisail Garcia coming to the Sox. That was kind of what you had to look forward to in the second half of that 2013 season was, okay, Garcia, this is somebody that should be a piece of this thing going forward. It was that and watching Chris Sale every fifth day. Sox aren't going to have that on the pitching side of it. Really, the one lone guy on this roster that is going to be here that is worth anything, that is worth your time and mental energy, is Luis Robert Jr. So, to your point, it's come 4:00 on August 1st. It's going to be all about watching Luis Robert Jr. in the batter's box 3 to 4 times a night, and then hoping that if you get guys, and I think you're pretty spot on when you say that. I anticipate the returns to be mostly for major league ready guys that are in AAA, maybe have had a brief cup of coffee to this point, again, because this front office is going to have these delusions of being able to turn this thing around quickly in 2024. So, we might get some more of those moments like giving a standing ovation to Yohan Moncada for drawing a bases-loaded walk. That's kind of where we're at here.
Oh, how naive we were. But hey, look, it all looked good on paper. We'll say that. It just sucks. That's where we're at. You brought up Luis Robert there. Now, this is years down the road. I don't know. Once again, like Dylan sees, I don't expect them to get traded no matter what kind of Astros blog rumors are out there, right? I don't expect that, but I had a conversation with a friend last night, and we were once again doing the thought exercise, hypotheticals here. And my question is are the White Sox committed? I know he's still got a few years left on this deal, but after that, are they committed to keeping him here long term? My thinking would be yes. But if you aren't for some reason, or that wouldn't be in the cards, or that it's going to be too expensive for them, they don't want to pay it, whatever, would you trade him now? Sell high? that became a hypothetical there. I just wanted to hear your take on it.
Would I do it? No. I just don't think that you would be able to get appropriate level of return for him at this point. I'm trying to think. I can't remember if there's 4 or 5 years with the options remaining on his deal. So you're just talking about an astronomical prospect return that would have to be coming back to you. And to me, it just doesn't make sense from the White Sox standpoint, and also from a potential acquiring team standpoint, because that asking price is just going to be too high for just about anybody, even a team that has as much prospect capital as like the Orioles or the Dodgers, for example. You hear these talks about the Sox wanting a lot for rental guys like Lucas Giolito and Lance Lynn. How much is that going to be for a Gold Glove center fielder that's going to hit 30+ home runs with 5 years of control?
Right. So I'm with you on that, and I wouldn't move him either. But just for the sake of this, I think this question was born out of a little bit of is this as good as it gets with Luis Robert? That would kind of is he going to get injured? Next year, go back to those.
And I think
ways. Is there going to be a drop off? Is this plate approach looks better than it did back in like April? But is that here to stay? And can that output still be at this kind of MVP discussion level?
And that's really what you have to kind of figure out for the remainder of this season and in 2024. And I think it's going to be fascinating to look at. Say you move Yaz, say a team decides they want to bite on TA and they move him, and you're starting to hear some rumblings. Boob had mentioned in his column, I think it was today or yesterday, about potentially Eloy being available. Would a really stripped down lineup where Luis Robert Jr. is the centerpiece and the focal point of it, much the way that Jose Abreu was during failed rebuild 2.0, what would that do to him mentally?
Right.
And would you continue to get this type of performance out of him? And I think that's all something that has to kind of be determined for the remainder of this season and into next. So that's really what we're going to have to kind of watch and see.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I bring that up because I think it was just kind of born out of the fear of that, this might be as good as it gets. It very well could be. I mean, injuries happen in baseball. You can go back and underperform, right? You're talking about guys that are just have a, stellar year. And then the next year looks disappointing in comparison because they weren't putting up those same level of numbers. So that's just kind of where my head was on that. So I wanted to clear that up with you. All right. We're getting close to wrapping this thing up. Hit me with some final thoughts here. I know some people decry this, but fucking beat the Cubs. Come on. I still consider them a rival, even if some don't. You share the same market, share the same city. Let's have some pride and back at home.
I have less than zero confidence that they are going to come in and show any pride. I think that the fan base is not going to really come out for these two games here.
That's what's going to be annoying. It's going to be flooded. Yeah. Ballpark's going to be flooded with blue.
And the sad thing about it is the Cubes have done a really good job this year of beating up on bad teams.
Right.
And what are the White Sox?
Yeah, they're a bad team.
So that does not lead me with a great deal of encouragement heading into these two games here on Tuesday and Wednesday. Hopefully I'm wrong, but don't have real positive vibes.
Also, it's going to be hot this week. The temperature is rising up there, and I feel like that place is going to turn into a launching pad. I mean, I know it's pretty home run friendly park to start with, but it's weird because the Cubs can be like hot or cold offensively, but when they're hot, it feels like they score like fucking 17 runs. We're going to get a repeat of that ridiculous game like a couple of years ago.
Right. So you have that aspect of it, and then the thing that's going to kind of be on full display is, with Lance going in one of these games and Michael Kopech, like if you get that bad Kopech start where he's going out there and he's walking four guys in 5 innings again, all of a sudden those solo home runs that you're giving up on other occasions are going to turn into 2 and 3 run shots because the Cubs do have one of the highest team walk rates in the league. So they are patient. They do take pitches, and that's where it can be really dangerous with guys like Michael Kopech and Lance Lynn, given their propensity to give up home runs this year.
Right. Even in that outing that we said was, definitely a good bounce back outing for Kopech. What is it? 4 walks in that one? I mean, this thing needs to get under control, and, it works on multiple levels there because he needs to find the control if he wants to be that, kind of dominant, effective guy. Because giving up hits, really, I mean, that's what he's been, limiting hits. He's been really good at that because when you go and look at the stats, he had he's always among the top leaderboard in games of 1 or 2 hits given up, in that sort of, but then the walks compounded and then they got issues there. And all it takes is one big swing, like you said, to just absolutely blow open innings. So for our sake, and for, I guess, the rotation next year's sake, him figuring it out here in the back half of this 2023 season would be most ideal. Because I'd like to see him be that guy. You've seen it in stretches, and it's pretty electric when he's on. But man, you just don't know what you're going to get command wise.
Yeah, that's really a big problem. So 3rd start now, coming off of the IL, kind of really in the full swing of the rotation here. Hopefully he can go out there and establish that fastball command right away, first inning there on Tuesday night. He's going to have to. Like I said, this Cubes team, they are very good at working counts, taking walks. So he's got to be in that strike zone early and often if he's going to have any success on Tuesday night.
Yep, right. And then Wednesday starter is Lance Lynn, as you mentioned. Like I said, I'm assuming that he's going to make that start because with how slow this deadline's been moving, I don't see that kicking into high gear because it's not, August 1st yet there. I feel like there's going to be a lot of last minute sort of dealing going on at this deadline, just at the snail's pace that we're going at right now. So I'd imagine him making it, and I'm going to be there. So I really, really hope that Lance puts out a good performance for that one because I assume that one is more likely to be a last start. And I've always been a big supporter of Lance, so I'd like to see him get it done there on Wednesday night.
Yeah, you definitely want to see him finally come home here for the first time in a couple of weeks and put together a couple of quality performances. again, I'm not overly optimistic about it heading into it, but I definitely want to be wrong.
Yeah. Yep. All right. The last thing I had, today kind of struck me that Immaculate Grid's been really popular. The baseball reference game. It's fun. It's a fun game to play. But White Sox were on it today as one of them. Yeah. How rare did you get? How rare are you getting with these White Sox players, Steve?
I try my best to get pretty rare with these. Let me actually pull mine up here this morning because I think it was like a 57 rarity score. So I did really well with it on that standpoint. I know I threw Paulie on there, which look, anytime you can throw in the captain, I mean, that's always going to be a plus for you.
I just wanted to ask because I pulled out a Trace Thompson for the Dodgers White Sox crossover today. And that was good for the rarity score because that was pretty low.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. My real rare one that I threw on there was Eduardo Escobar on the Twins Sox crossover there.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
So that was kind of cool to see. And then I obviously seeing some other people out there throwing in the Francisco Liriano, the guy that Eduardo Escobar was traded for. So there's really some interesting ones that you can throw out there. That's always fun. I definitely always will try to throw in a Sox guy when I have the opportunity there.
Right. Yeah. It's fun to play. And I think you're definitely just like seeing your scores. I haven't posted any of mine there, but I played every day. And then I'll kind of like look and see. I know you and our guy Sox Insane, a few others, Brian Lefevre, he's huge into that. Our video editor here at On Tap. So
it's addicting.
It is. It's fun. And I like there's a Puck Doku one. So there's hockey one. And I know that Sports Reference added the foosball one as well there too. So that shit's fun to tool around with. But I just wanted to get your take on that because it's fun to see how rare we can get, especially when the White Sox are involved. I was happy that today ended up being a White Sox day on that.
Yeah, no, I've been able to throw in some Juan Uribes, Jermaine Diaz, Adamaso Marte, Octavio Dotel. So those are always fun when you can kind of work those in there. And like I said, when that opportunity presents itself, I will always go to try to throw in the White Sox guy and try to get as obscure with it as I can in a lot of cases.
Yeah. For example, today, I think the Twins White Sox was a crossover one. I know you said you went one route. I went with Justin Morneau, White Sox legend, Justin Morneau. Well, just because I knew, because I try to do them from memory. I'm not going and looking up see who did it and see how rare I can get. I want to test my memory on it. So I knew some of the other ones. I was like, I'm probably gonna have to go ones that are a little bit more mainstream for these, but for the Sox ones, I can really dig in there.
Well, and it was funny. So then for the one cross section of the Twins Orioles one, I threw in the Cleveland Indian James Thome.
Yeah,
thinking that was one that was going to really kind of stump people on it. But that was at I want to say maybe 8 or 9% at one point. The one that actually involving Tomey that had the lower percentage one, there was a Dodgers Orioles one there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't think and most people forget about that. In 2009, the Sox traded him as a waiver deal in August. So he spent the last 6 weeks of the year basically as a pinch hitter for that Dodgers team in 2009. So that's one that right there, I mean, that's an ultra rare one. And I think that one only had maybe 1 or 2% on it.
Wow. Yeah. Hats off to you for getting those rarity scores pretty low. I don't know if it's going to take a while at least, or I'm going to have to get some favorable, teams and stat categories to be able to break up, below 100 on those rarity scores. But I just wanted to bring that up because like you said, it's addicting, fun to play, and our White Sox were mentioned in it today. So Immaculate Grid, go check it out. Baseball Reference if you haven't yet. So all right, Steve, we're about to close her down here. Final thoughts, and then we will roll on out of Sunday Funday.
Final thoughts. Terrible weekend. Close out a 9-game road trip, 2-7. Or excuse me, 3-6. You got the 2 games in Atlanta and the one in New York against the Mets. So 3-6. Just really poor way to start the second half. And you're coming home finally. We talked about this last weekend. Play with some pride. Come out here and try to win some ball games and hopefully start to see a little bit of action here with the trade deadline and can start to move forward with this thing and trying to reshape this organization that is in just complete disrepair.
Right. Yeah. My final thought is all on the trade deadline because, like I said, it's annoying that it's just at a snail's pace right now. So I'm just excited to see what they could potentially get back. And I know that I don't trust Rickon as far as I can throw him. All of that, I totally buy into all of that sentiment. But things need to be shaken up. And guess what? Rickon's not getting fired between now and August 1st. So it is what it is. You have to think about how the organization's going to act here. And I'm just excited to see break up some of this, sludge, this grime that we have here that is White Sox culture currently, and hopefully just see guys play just to make me a little bit loose. I feel like that you just don't see that. Everything's on edge with this group right now, so I'm ready for that to break. The dam's got to break soon, and but for better or for worse, it's going to happen by August 1st. So that's where my mind is. Trade deadline. Let's see what we can get. Maybe Lance bump up that value after a rough outing, especially at the start on Friday there, and possibly last time seeing him in person there. So that's off the Lance, and that's about all I got here for Sunday Funday.
Yeah, pretty well said. Let's go ahead and send it home, baby.
All righty. Make sure you're subscribed on Tip Sportsnet on YouTube. Join the conversation here. Also like us on Facebook. Those comments show up for the stream. Twitter does not. So if you're on Twitter, get over YouTube or Facebook as well. Check out ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs, and give us a follow on socials at Sox on Tap and at On Tap Sportsnet. All right, that does it for Sunday Funday. Until next time, White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.